Where'll you be going?
Texas?
Damn, son, where'd you find this?
Go on, make it happen.
And now here's Steve and Michelle.
Welcome from the heart of Dripping Springs. We are your hosts, Michelle Lewis and Steve Mallett.
Well, howdy, Michelle.
Howdy, Steve.
How's it going?
It's going delicious.
Got a great show today, again, after coming off of JP Sears last week. What a high that was.
Well, I'm waiting for the hate mail to come in.
Oh, it's already happening. I can't wait. It's going to be so fun.
Icky.
Yeah, Mallett Christopher from Christopher Law, right, is going to join us today.
That's right, and we would really like to thank our sponsors, Mallett Integrity Team.
Yep, M. Elliott Studio and Capital Farm Credit.
And our unofficial sponsor, Pig
Pen Barbecue.
For sure.
Which we'll hit right after the show.
Absolutely. What'd you do last weekend?
I went and saw Brett Goldstein.
Brett Goldstein.
Do you know who Brett Goldstein is?
Is he? No.
He's a comedian, and you actually know him very well.
Wait a minute. Like, how did you went and saw?
I went to the Bass Concert Hall and saw a comedian.
Like, was it?
Brett Goldstein.
Was it at 2:00 in the afternoon?
No, it was at 7, and by 9 o'clock, we were yawning and couldn't wait to get home. Brett Goldstein is Roy Kent.
No.
From Ted Lasso, yeah. And he was freaking hilarious.
How did you get tickets for that?
Holly got them for us. There wasn't many seats left, but we were sitting way up high. Have you been to Bass Concert Hall?
Yes.
It's like the top of the Empire State Building up there, but it was really good. He is so funny, so talented, really great comedian.
Oh, wow. That is a lot of fun.
Yeah. So I don't know if he's going to come back through Austin, but he was a lot of fun. So, and it was funny because Holly came home and she goes, I got us tickets to see Brett Goldstein. And I went,
who?
Huh? What? Who? And she actually said a couple of his lines from the show, the kind of crude ones. And I went, oh, Roy Kent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the chant that they do?
He's here, he's there, he's every effing where.
Yeah,
Roy Kent.
Roy Kent. Yeah.
Great
Oh,
time.
that sounds like a lot of fun. I can't believe that you went and did something like in the evening.
Yeah, I know. A Saturday after a long run in the morning, but it was a lot of fun. So it's the second episode of the month, so it's time for Mallett on the Market, the Real Estate Minute.
On the Market.
Yeah, brought to you by the Mallett Integrity Team. A couple things I wanted to go over real quick. One of the stats that jumped out to me last month that was really eye-opening was in Dripping Springs, this is just Dripping Springs, the average starting list price, median starting list price was $875,000.
The medium average list price?
Median.
Okay.
So more, less than half and more than half, right in the middle of those.
Thank you for giving me Michelle math.
Sorry,
yeah.
But so $875,000, the sold price. So what those homes, the median price was $732,000.
Oh,
so
that
100 and whatever that is, 118,000. No, actually more than that. Off the list, the original list price, which is telling me. People are still thinking it's 2020 and you can just name your price, and we are not in that market anymore. Those days are done. That ship has sailed. So you got to get right on the price. And so the number that you have in your head that if you go, I hope I can list my house for this, you can't. It's done. So look at some real numbers, some sales numbers, and price the house right to sell. So that's that part of the market right now. I wanted to talk real quick about referrals. We were talking in the office, and so many people don't understand about referrals. Like if you were going to move from here to Portland, I don't know why you would, but
why would you do that?
You know that you can call like our office or whoever your realtor is and say, man, find me a good agent in Portland. I want to only work with somebody that's good. And that agent will actually connect you with somebody. There's a referral fee that's paid, but that agent is then going to make sure that you don't just get the phone book, but just Google, Portland real estate agent and end up with whoever spends the most money on Google.
But you're not paying, the client does not pay the referral fee.
No, the client doesn't pay that, no. So that's just between the two agents. But anyway, so there's your Mallett on the Market Minute.
Mallett Minute?
Mallett Minute.
It's Mallett Minute. Steve, have you heard of the term the silver tsunami?
I've heard of that, but I don't know what it is.
Well, considering your birthday is coming up, I thought this would be a good conversation to have. It's the increasing number of older people in our population, particularly the baby boomers.
Okay.
The 1946 to 64. I know there's some discrepancy about whether you're a baby boomer,
Right.
but whatever. But older people are now living longer, and they're putting more stresses onto our healthcare, Social Security, housing, job market. So apparently there's a whole a push out there that you're going to have to die. Just kidding. That's not really. But the younger generations are actually blaming the silver tsunami on keeping them out of the housing market and the affordability, because they'll say, oh well, grandma and grandpa bought their house for $30,000 back in 1976 and they haven't sold it yet, and when they sell it they're making $1 million. So they're it's inflation, it's just the market, it's whatever you want to call it. But they're predicting over the next decade, over 30 million homes could go on the market, hit the market with downsizing or dying, the 2 Ds.
Oh, yeah. Well, dying will do it.
Yeah.
The downsizing thing's been a trend that's been coming for a while, though. I think there's a lot of people that, 10 years ago said, oh, I got to have a 4,000 square foot house. And then they got it. And now that taxes are as insane as they are. I'm going off on a tangent, but I have a rental house in Buda and I collect $24,000 a year in rent. And I send $10,000 of that to Hayes County for taxes. Almost 50%. But you take the taxes and the insurance, it's literally half of that goes to just those two things in the overhead.
I looked at what our taxes were and broke it down and looked at the school taxes and what percentage we're paying towards school taxes, towards everything else. And I know people argue about this all the time, but it's astronomical what we pay into school taxes. And
it
then
really is.
Now they're doing the new high school design, the new Dripping Springs High School. They're asking for input, and they don't have the bond passed for that yet. So I guess they've got to get the design before they go out for bids on the design. But
there's a lot of reasons why somebody would downsize. That's one of them. And you could build a 1,600, 1,800 square foot really, really nice home, and if it's laid out well and designed well, it can be a showpiece. But a lot of people almost think, well, bigger is better in terms of a house. But if you lay it out right, it can be done. And the county taxes you most. The biggest thing they pay attention to is the square footage.
Well, the only reason why we're not moving out of our 4,000 square feet house is because
you paid it. It was so cheap when you bought it.
I don't want to.
I don't want to. I don't want to mess with that.
They're going to have to. For a while there, we called it our Pine Box house, but I mean, it is part of our retirement, just like everybody else. And if you're thinking about downsizing and you kind of just want somebody to crunch some numbers, give Steve a call and he'll be able to do that.
Hey, Super Bowl is this weekend.
It is. And you will be asleep, probably.
Well,
you don't care.
because you know what I'm doing the day before.
Oh, yes. You're doing a little run or something,
right?
A
little marathon in Phoenix, which it's the Mesa Marathon. And I have a goal this year. So I'll be 61 the day after this podcast comes out. And I have not run a sub 4-hour marathon at this age. So my goal is to break 4 hours. So next week, I'll tell you how that went. But I'm feeling really good. I don't have any. I was talking to a friend of mine this morning. She said, do you have any little niggles, meaning like little weird aches and pains? And I have none. It's kind of crazy that I'll be 61 and I have no hip problems, no knee problems. I know, I'm knocking. I'm
knocking on some wood over there.
But on the Super Bowl, do you have a dog in that fight? Do you have some predictions? I want to pin you down and say, predict what's going to happen, and we'll talk about that next week.
Okay,
too.
My prediction, I've never been a 49er fan ever, but now that my kids live in San Francisco and my daughter-in-law is a 49er fan, I actually believe that the 49ers deserve to win. I've watched them all year. I think they've played hard, except the last game with the Lions, but I think they deserve this one. I'm really kind of sick and tired of the Mahomes and Kelsey antics on the field. I have to tell you, I've been a Kelsey fan. I like him, but he really pissed me off what he did to Justin Tucker. You don't mess with UT's son. Justin Tucker.
That was
and
classless.
they turned around and they blamed it on Justin, but they said that's something that Justin does on the field, when he does his warm-ups. But I'm sorry. I'm a Justin Tucker fan by way of that. I'm rooting for the 49ers. What about you?
I don't even know who was playing.
Well, I told you.
I know. It's the 49ers and the Chiefs.
Yes.
And I would say the only reason I would say the 49ers is because you and your family are going to support. I don't have any dog in that fight. Honestly, I don't even care.
Have you even watched one football game?
I have not watched a football game in 5-6 years. I actually, I have it where I can watch it on TV, but I just could care less. So.
We lost a great one yesterday.
Yeah.
Toby Keith. What an amazing country music artist. I've met him several times. He's the Red Solo Cup king.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever even heard of that song.
I've not heard that one, but I've heard a lot of his songs.
He's great. Big USO supporter, big military. He sang courtesy of the Red, White, and Blue.
Yeah.
How Do You Like Me Now? Should have been a cowboy. That was his breakthrough song back in 1993.
That was I was reading something that was played 3 million times on the radio, which for that time was a record.
Yeah, and then did you hear his newest song, "Don't Let the Old Man In"? I mean, it
have
wasn't
not.
really his newest song. It was in that.
That movie
that show
with,
Grand
with Clint Eastwood.
Yes. Is it Gran Torino or
Was that Gran Torino?
it's like where he's the grumpy old guy?
Yes.
I have two songs playing at the same time.
Oh.
Yeah, because I'm really good at this
Yeah, I
technical
didn't actually
stuff.
even know. I was driving to the gym this morning. I didn't even know Toby Keith was sick.
He had
that
stomach
blew me
cancer.
away.
Yeah, he had stomach cancer, and it was he was an amazing guy, especially when we were all going through the trauma of 9/11, and he wrote that amazing song and
Which
all the
pulled
visits.
a lot of people together from all different walks of life.
62
And
years old.
Yeah, everybody got behind that.
One of his famous lines was, "I ain't as good as I once was, but I'm as good as I ever was." And I thought that was a good lead in to somebody's having a birthday next week.
I am. I'm not as good as I once was, but I'm as good as I ever was.
Good as once. And so I did a little dig in what happened in 1963. Some of the highlights, okay? Obviously, Kennedy
Columbus discovered the Americas.
Ocean blue.
Yeah.
Water was discovered. Fire. Fire.
The wheel.
The wheel and fire were discovered. No, Kennedy was assassinated in 1963.
Geez, wow.
Martin Luther King Jr. had his famous "I Have a Dream" speech.
Mm-hmm.
The U.S., Soviet Union, and Britain signed the nuclear test treaty. Nuclear test ban treaty.
Yeah.
Sorry, ban.
Yeah.
Dr. Michael Bagaki pioneers the use of the artificial heart, which
Really?
yeah, that was really cool. Jack Nicklaus won his first Masters.
Oh my gosh.
That's golf.
Jeez, wow.
Audio cassettes were introduced in 1963.
But I remember 8-tracks when I was a kid. Remember 8-tracks in cars?
Yeah, I remember.
That was crazy.
Also, zip codes were implemented in the U.S.
Oh, God, I'm as old as zip codes.
Well, and I just wanted to, you're in good company. So in 1963, Steve, you ready? Who else was born in 1963?
Somebody great, I'm sure.
Your twin, Brad Pitt.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Me and Brad, we go way back
Yep.
to 1963.
Michael Jordan. Johnny Depp and Whitney Houston.
That was good company.
Yeah.
They've all done a little bit better than me, but, who's counting?
So happy early birthday, Steve.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. 61. You remember last week we talked about Tesla was coming out with a new $25,000 car that was codenamed Redwood?
Yes. Did they come up with a name?
They have not yet, but some of our listeners emailed us some names. Which I thought were pretty funny. So I'm just going to go through a couple. Marianne in Austin said the Teslarific. Let's see. George in Dripping Springs said Tesla the Magnificent.
Tesla the Stupid.
Yeah. And then Susan in DS said the Electron Flyer.
Okay.
And then I don't remember who this one. Elon McMusk face.
That would be me.
Yeah, you said that one.
That would be me.
I don't think we've nailed a name yet, though. So if anybody has any better names than that, send them our way. But those were pretty good, actually.
You know, speaking of a Tesla, this kind of ties into
a
my
segue. I gave you a segue.
Yeah, a man was pulled over in a Tesla wearing
I saw this story.
Apple Vision Pros, and it's a mixed reality aspect headset.
It's a headset you wear, and it's kind of scary.
It really is.
I think you could lose track of what's really going on in the world.
Well, you can still see real life, but there's open windows in front of you, and depending on how you tilt your head is what window you're looking at. So you could actually have like Spotify way over here on your right, and then you could have Apple TV over here on your left. It's $3,500.
Yep, I saw that.
It looks incredibly stupid.
It does. It looks like snow goggles with a helmet on or something.
And your eyes apparently are really magnified. So when people see you on the outside, your eyes look like googie eyes.
Oh my God.
And you control things with your eyeballs and then like by pinching your fingers.
Yeah, the video I saw showed him like in his car, no hands on the wheel or anything, like moving things around in his head, and he was looking like this, and crazy.
You can do FaceTime on it, but apparently you can see that person's face, but they see like an AI version of you. It's like some weird altered version.
Do we think this is good?
I think this is dangerous. I think
agree.
This is very, very dangerous.
You know what, people are losing track of reality already. I could see you really losing track of reality doing this.
Well, the biggest argument I heard against it is like, granted, this is just the first series of it, right? But the metaverse, totally failed. Like Mark Zuckerberg, that failed. So there is a good portion.
They're still keeping after it, though.
But there's a still portion of the world that wants real life people. But they said, eventually, this could just be a contact in your eye, and you're able to just look at something and answer the phone, or look at something and how much more disconnected can we be?
I know. At some point, we're going to have to decide how much we want technology and disrupting our life. Now, there are some things that technology is good for, but so last week on Friday, I took a sabbatical from social media. I can tell you at the end of the day, I felt much more at peace. 24 hours off of social media, I felt much better about the world.
I just think if you look at parents now at a restaurant or walking around, their babies are plugged in and glued to these iPads. Now, granted, when our kids were little, sometimes when we had something we needed to do, we'd plop them in front of the TV and put in a VeggieTales or something. Yeah.
But I wouldn't take them out in public and do that.
No.
I mean, you got to.
That's what Play-Doh is for.
Yeah. I think you take your kids out in public, it's an experience for them to learn how to be in public. And it's a teachable moment. You're not just carrying them around on your hip. You have to be attentive to them in public and teach them how to act properly.
When we used to go into a store, I would tell my kids, I would say, see with your eyes, not your hands.
Yeah.
And they would walk with their hands behind their back like they were little prisoners of war because I wouldn't let them touch anything.
Yeah.
And of course, Tate and Logan would take it to the extreme and they'd stick their eyeball and stuff and be like, I'll see with
Of course
mine.
they would.
You know?
Of course they would. Yeah.
But I think it's setting a very dangerous path, and I think this whole AI that they talk about, wow, that's some scary stuff, and I'm interested to see what the attorney has to say.
Mallett Christopher's going to come in here. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure that I don't hate social media. I don't hate being online. But there's a lot of bad things about it. You got to be really selective. Mm-hmm. Obviously, we use it for our business and for the podcasts and all that. But
necessary evil.
Yeah, unfortunately, it shouldn't be that way, though,
I know.
right? So anyway, Well, Mallett Christopher is going to come in and
She does a workshop.
She
right?
does a workshop called the LIFT Workshop, which is an acronym for Legal, Insurance, Financial, and Therapy. And she's one of the speakers. 4 speakers come in. They have an upcoming workshop on February 15th, so the week that this comes out, which is about strengthening family relationships, which is the day after Valentine's Day.
Oh,
So.
and Steve's birthday.
Yes, yeah.
Please-
Valentine's Day is my birthday.
Yeah, please direct all gifts to the front reception area.
Yes,
There will be a
yes.
box designated.
No
for-
gift is too large. So, well, let's take a little break and get Mallett Christopher in here. Proudly sponsored by.
At Capital Farm Credit, they understand that owning land is more than just a transaction. It's a legacy, a future, and a place to call your own.
For generations, Capital Farm Credit has been the trusted lending partner for land loans, farmers, ranchers, and rural dreamers just like you.
Their personalized loan solutions cater to your unique needs, making the journey to land ownership smoother than ever.
Capital Farm Credit, your land, your legacy. Visit capitalfarmcredit.com or Mark Rutledge at 512-892-4425.
Capital Farm Credit, an equal credit housing lender.
Interior design should be an investment in your life and home. Let M. Elliott Studio transform your space, where interior design meets excellence in Central Texas.
Beyond just selecting colors and furnishings, team principal and owner, Montana Elliott, is a trained and licensed interior designer.
With her knowledge of architectural principles, building codes, space planning, and design theory, her team will work with you to understand your needs and lifestyle.
From concept to completion, M. Elliott Studio is committed to enhancing your space with a timeless and classic style.
Ready to redefine your space?
melliottstudio.com, 512-781-0224.
This portion of the show is brought to you by the Mallett Integrity Team of real estate professionals. They are based in Dripping Springs and bring you over 45 years of combined experience helping people reach their hill country real estate dreams. When you want the best in town, call them at 512-829-2062 or look them up at mallettintegrityteam.com. And now, here's Steve and Michelle.
And we're back. Welcome, Mallett Christopher.
Thank you, Michelle, and thank you, Steve. This is really something I've been looking forward to, but also scared.
Oh, don't be scared. We're easy. Yeah, thanks for
Okay.
coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you.
Steve is scary.
I'm not scary. I'm a big old teddy bear. Mallett, how'd you end up in Dripping Springs?
Well, that's kind of a long story. I grew up in Florida, and my husband was working for IBM, which stands for I've been moved. And yes, we were moved. We moved to Austin, Texas, and we ended up finding some friends in Dripping Springs that kept saying, you got to come to Dripping. And so we did, and we love it. We've been here 20 years now.
Oh, that's wow. Yeah. That's great. Yeah. So you're, I think 20 years is the old timer. Like you've been here for a long time.
Yes. The one stoplight. We all remember that.
I remember that. Yeah. That's how long I've been here. Where'd you grow up?
Well, I spent my first 4 years in Italy. I was born in Rome.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
And yeah, so then my parents moved to the States. My mother was from the United States. And so we moved here. And then I spent most of my life in Fort Lauderdale.
Do you have dual citizenship?
No. And you know why? Because I was born there and I relinquished my Italian citizenship. They will not let me have dual citizenship now. Now, my brothers who were born here, they have it.
Because your dad's Italian.
Yes.
Oh,
and so I
interesting.
relinquished my Italian citizenship. So they said, well,
But
that's it.
Why
can't
did
come
you
back.
relinquish
Well,
it? Did you?
you
Was
were
that
3.
something you did?
I was 4 years old.
Oh,
I didn't
that's
know what I was doing.
Yeah.
But, they had to do that in order for me to become a U.S. citizen at the time.
All right.
Yeah.
Huh. Wow.
That's interesting. Have you been back since then?
Oh, yes. Yeah, several times. And because my family's there. And so we got to go back. Oh, I think the last time was about 3 years ago.
I just went in October and it was an amazing trip for me. It was so just the history. As a matter of fact, the dress I'm wearing today is the dress I wore to the Vatican.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, lovely.
Yes.
Made in China.
Made in China.
Well, you know, I was baptized in the Vatican. So
No way.
yeah.
Wow.
Oh, that's a great story.
That is a
Yeah.
great story.
And it's funny because recently I just was talking at the Women's Club, and I came out of that meeting and somebody said, "Oh, I heard a rumor that you were born at the Vatican." And I said, "Born?
Born?
Oh, no." I said, "I can't even imagine my poor mother, you know, the water breaking and everything else going right." But I said, "No, I was baptized in the Vatican."
Funny.
Oh, wow. That is a cool story.
That is a cool- that's a very cool story.
That's a cool story.
So you obviously went to law school because now you're practicing. You have your own practice. Why did you decide to open a practice in Dripping Springs?
Well, I had a practice in Fort Lauderdale, and it was at the time the largest female-owned law practice in Fort Lauderdale. And so when my husband moved here, I actually commuted for like almost 2 years, going back and forth between Austin and Fort Lauderdale.
How hard was that to close your practice?
It was very hard, but it was sort of a choice. Like, do I follow my husband or do I stay there? So, but I made sure that every one of my employees, I had 26 employees at the time.
Wow.
Every one of them got another job. And so we were able to do that and make sure that, everything transitioned well.
So you shut that down? You didn't sell it? Yeah.
Yeah, I just shut it down.
Is it not the kind of business that you could have sold to somebody?
I probably could have at the time, but it was one of those, like, I finally made the decision after a year and a half to just decide to transfer everything. And so we did. And by then, many of my employees had gotten other jobs because they knew, that's kind of what we were thinking about. And so that's kind of what happened with
I lived
that.
in Florida. Did you know I lived in Florida?
No, I didn't
I
know
went to
that.
kindergarten in Lakeland, Florida.
Oh,
That's
okay.
where I went.
There's something
That's a nice area.
infamous about Lakeland. What is it about Lakeland?
The only thing I remember about Lakeland when I was a kid was there was a big lake in the middle of the town, and there were like alligators
Oh, yeah.
in there. Yeah.
There's
That's pretty
alligators
common
in
there.
every lake in Florida.
I know.
Just about,
but-
yeah. That's right.
And you, in your bio, you said you were a former prosecutor too.
Yes. I
Was that in Florida?
Yes, in Fort Lauderdale. I was there for 5 years at the state attorney's office, which is like the district attorney here. And I started out in juvenile, then went into felonies, and then ended up my career at prosecuting sex crimes and child abuse cases.
That must have been horrific.
It was. I kind of felt like I was wearing the white hat, putting the bad guys away, but also I had 2 daughters at home. And so I tried not to get too paranoid, shall we say. And but it does affect you. And there were many days that I cried at home about just the stories that I was hearing from the kids.
Yeah, that's what would get me is that you've because if you're prosecuting, you got to see all the evidence, and some of that evidence must have just been.
Oh, yeah.
You see the
Hard
worst
to
of the
see.
worst of society.
You
too.
really do. You really do. And I, at first wasn't prepared for it. And I remember my first case and I thought, oh my gosh, I just sat at home and just cried when I was reading the child that had written everything, had done an outcry. And so it was difficult, but like I said, I felt really good about what I did. And I did enjoy prosecuting. I had a good time doing it. It was probably the best job I ever had in many ways.
Really?
Yeah.
And then you came out of that and opened that practice in Fort Lauderdale?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Where you were defending kids that were getting in trouble on spring break?
No, I did not do that. I just went into family law. It just seemed like a good transition for me.
I'm just kidding. I think that's what Fort Lauderdale's most famous for is
Absolutely.
their crazy spring break parties, though.
Yeah.
Would you know anything about crazy spring
I went to
break?
one once and I did not have a good time because I used to live in South Florida. I used to live in Homestead.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
Oh,
so-
okay.
Yeah, and I went one time. I was like, this is not for me.
Because it was after 9 o'clock at night.
It was after 9 o'clock. Yeah, there was a lot of alcohol. What made you, Mallett, what made you interested in becoming an attorney in the first place?
It's always been sort of in the back of my mind. I'm going to date myself here that I used to watch Perry Mason and, the old legal shows. And it was something that was kind of in the back of my mind. But I had started going down the path of psychology instead. And I got my master's in psych. And it just was something that kind of led me into law, I thought, well, this is a good way for me to go ahead and help people.
Yeah.
And it worked. You know, I really enjoyed it.
Do you have any family that also went into law?
Nope. I'm it.
You're the one.
I get all the phone calls.
What'd your mom and dad do?
Well, my dad was a doctor, and my mom was a stay-at-home mom.
Oh, that's great.
And so, yeah.
Yeah. So you came from that kind of a heavy education background. And yeah. So where'd you go to law school?
Oh, Nova University, the Shepherd Broad Law Center, and that's in Fort Lauderdale. So at the time, that's where we were living. And so I just applied to the one school and got in and got my degree and went to work for the state attorney's office immediately.
Yeah. So you said you got a psychology degree?
Yes.
So does that help you in your law practice?
Very much.
Yeah, I bet it does.
It does. In a lot of ways, it helps me to have compassion and care for people. But in addition to that, I also have seen every kind of possible condition or psychological issue. And so nothing surprises me.
Let's psychoanalyze Steve right now. You want to?
Oh, let's do it.
That is not a can of worms you want to open.
I say that's a great idea. That's a great idea.
No.
So what are the main differences you see? You've lived in Florida a long, long time, and you've lived here in Dripping Springs or Texas a long time. But like, what are the differences you see between Texas and Florida?
Well, as one judge put it to me one time when he went to another state, he said people here wave with their full hand instead of one finger. And that's kind of the, Florida, there's a lot of transients in the South Florida area, and it's just not as warm as it is here in terms of, not only the heat.
Temperature.
No, not temperature. But the people are warmer, I think. It's just...
here they are.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
That when I came here from Southern California 20 years ago, that was the biggest surprise to me was how friendly Texans were. Mm-hmm. Just in general, everybody's much more friendly, much more open. So
that's because we're the best.
Best state in the
Union.
That's right.
Yeah,
we're just the best.
Exactly.
You got it.
Yeah. Tell us about your practice now, and then I want to ask you some questions about wills and things like that. So tell us about what you're doing now, what your practice is.
Well, in the 20 years that I've been here, I've focused mostly on family law, and that includes everything from divorce to modifications, child support, child custody, anything that involves a family, pretty much. A few years ago during COVID, I started getting a lot of requests from clients to do wills and trusts. And then, of course, there were some probates. So I started getting into that area more and more. And I hired an associate, and she's working on a lot of the family law cases, and she's great. Her name is Alyssa Lee, and she's been dynamite. She's been with me now almost 3 years. And so I started doing more wills and estate planning, and I really enjoy that. And I enjoy talking to the people about what their needs are, what their goals are.
Yeah.
What do you think the biggest misconception is about getting all of the paperwork done for your estate? As far as one of the biggest questions I have was a will. Okay, well, my mom doesn't have any assets. She doesn't own a house. She doesn't really have a lot of money in the bank. So I don't really need to get a will for her. What's your argument against that?
Well, I personally, I believe everybody needs one because it's something. My mother came to live with us when she got cancer, and she didn't have anything really. And but it was very important to me that we didn't have any problems afterwards. I have 2 brothers. Not that we don't get along, but you never know what's going to happen, right? And so I wanted to make sure everything was laid out. And so we made sure that she was taking care of what she wanted. If there were heirlooms or something that she wanted a specific child to get, they got to have it. And there wasn't going to be a fight about it. Anything in terms of the bank accounts or anything like that, we just put through the will. And everything is so much easier for people after somebody in their family passes. Makes it much easier.
What's that? So somebody comes in and says, I need a will. What's that process look like? Because you're talking about heirlooms and bank accounts and, and properties and probably cars and all these things. What's like step 1 of that process? What's that?
Step 1 is they fill out a questionnaire, and so they submit that to us and then come in for a consultation. Those consultations can last anywhere from like an hour to an hour and a half. And we just sit down and discuss goals, discuss their family members. Sometimes people want to exclude certain family members, and they want to make sure that they don't.
I'm going to exclude you, Michelle.
Okay. Try it, Steve.
Yeah. So that must be a difficult conversation.
It goes with excluding. So how hard are wills nowadays to contest?
Well, I mean, I always say, no matter what you do, people can always sue, right? They can always cause a lawsuit. So we do the best we can in terms of preventing that. And most of the time, if it's out there in black and white, this is what the person wanted. They wanted to exclude them. There's reasons that they wanted to exclude them. And so we just put that in there, and most of the time they get it. There's also a clause in there that says, if you fight it, you don't get anything anyway. So yeah.
There is a clause in? Is that contained? Is that boilerplate like in every will?
I haven't seen it in every will, but we do it in ours.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So if you add that, what are the other basic components of a will?
Well, there's in terms of other documents or
just
the actual
like
will itself.
You know, what should what components should be in everybody's will?
Okay.
Like I did mine with an online one. I'm sure it's terrible. I hate to admit that, but I did one. Kind of needed to do one quick. But so, what kind of things should people be looking for and expecting to talk about when they're going to get a will?
Yeah, that's a good question. We talk about, like I said, their goals. What is it they want to accomplish at the end of it? Do they want, maybe they have a child who's not ready to inherit at the age of 18.
Yeah.
So maybe we make it 25, or I've had people say 40. So it just depends on, what they want. If there's a house, a family homestead, they may want a certain child that grew up in that home to be able to have that home. So we talk about that, and we say, if the other child maybe wants to buy them out, fair market value, that's something that we can do. So there's a lot of different, it's very specific. People think, like you said, online wills, but we go into a lot of detail about what it is that they want, and we make sure that happens in their will.
So I have an unusual question. So what if, and this may not be so unusual, I just think it's kind of unusual, but someone says, okay, they died without a will, and everything is going through the process. Things get split up, whether legally or not legally, and then years later, a will is found. Mm-hmm. So
that just happened recently with Aretha Franklin, I think it was, that they were getting ready to close the estate, and they found the will inside the sofa. It was a handwritten will. Yeah, a handwritten will is a holographic will, and so it's valid. And so they discovered it, and so they had to go back in and say, yeah, this is what she wanted. So,
I just want to
follow up on that. But holographic will, does that mean that she sat on the couch and wrote down and said, you know what, I'm passing away, and here's what I want. I want this to go to them.
It can happen as long as it's in the person's own handwriting, and there's no typewritten information on it or anything. Then it can be considered valid. In fact, there was a case many years ago where somebody was dying. They had been run over by a tractor or something, and they were writing in their blood on the tractor. That was considered a valid will. Yeah.
No way. Written in blood. There's our title right there.
There you go, for sure.
I don't know if anybody listened to that.
Yeah,
maybe they will. Maybe they will.
That would get my attention.
I'm thinking of also, will that is so old, and now they were on their third wife, and the will states the first wife. Does it make conditions? So no,
if they're divorced, then in the state of Texas, then they don't inherit in terms of that. But we also, sometimes they might have children that might fight it or something. So there's always something that after a divorce, I tell people every 2 to 3 years, or when something changes in your life, whether it's a birth, a death, divorce, anything like that, we need to take a look at it, go through it, make sure that that's still the same thing that you want to have in your will.
Is there a statute of limitations on when the will has to be presented? Like if it was years and years later? 4
years is the statute here. Mm-hmm.
So somebody passes away and you can't find a will. Mm-hmm. So then that means that it goes into probate?
Yes. It would still go into probate, but in a different format. And usually it takes more time, more effort, more money.
To find the heirs and things.
Yeah.
So I should know more about this, but somebody passes away with a will, it still goes into probate.
Yes.
They pass away without a will, that goes into probate, but a different kind of probate.
Explain what probate is.
Yeah.
Probate, when somebody passes away, their assets need to be divided. And so the court will do that. Now, there are sometimes
in every case the court does
not
that?
in every case. There, like for example, if the value of the property is less than $75,000, then maybe we can get around that. But typically, it would be that you would go through a probate hearing, and usually it takes a few months. You have to make sure your death certificate's in place. You have to make sure that our petitions are filed. Everything goes through that. And then even after the probate hearing, we have some more paperwork that we have people fill out. So
it sounds very complicated.
I know. Well, and I think I was talking to somebody last week that lost her husband, and she didn't realize how much work it was going to. She knew it was going to be work, but she said it's 10 times more complicated and more work than I expected.
Yeah, I hear that a lot, actually.
Yeah. So when somebody's married and their spouse passes away, what's the first thing that they should do?
They should probably see if there's a life insurance policy, contact them, because those are automatic. It doesn't go through the will. Okay. Anything else that is like a retirement account or anything else also won't go through the will. So anything like that you can get quickly, maybe to pay for funeral expenses, things like that, that would be helpful. And then they should see an attorney and find out what they need to do in order to divide up the rest of the assets. If for example, everything is dependent on how things were written. If the bank accounts were in both names, if the house is in both names, that makes things easier.
Okay.
But if they're not, then sometimes we have to jump through some hoops.
There's so much talk nowadays about putting everything in trust. Is that to get around the probate process, or is that to just protect against inheritance taxes? And
it's interesting because I have a lot of people come in and say, I think I might need a trust. And not everybody does. So, it's more expensive to get a trust, to be honest. And so I take a look at that, and then I suggest to them, hey, maybe we can do this in the will. Or if they have a specific situation, like, for example, if there's a blended family and say they each have children, like, the old Brady Bunch kind of thing. If they each have children, then what happens when one of those spouses dies? If everything goes to that spouse, then guess who's going to get it? Their kids are not going to get it eventually, because in their new will, because it's not contractual, in their new will, they might leave everything to their children instead of their spouse's children. So people get cut out that way.
Yeah, that happened to my father. Well, that's supposedly what happened. Yeah, it was interesting, and you find the ugliness in people when money and death come around, right?
Yeah, there's a saying that I learned early on when I was doing prosecuting, and that it was basically that when you see criminal defendants, they're usually on their best behavior, right? So you see who is potentially bad at their best. But when you're dealing with families, you see good people at their worst.
Oh, yeah. Families and money.
Yes.
Yeah. I've seen that before. I'm a real estate broker, and we do a lot of divorce sales, and somebody passes away, they got to sell the property. And it's amazing to me some of the things that family members have said to me over the years. Like we had one case where a sister didn't want our client to sell the property because she was going to inherit it at her sister's passing.
Oh, wow.
And she was all over me. Like, I couldn't sell it. I'm like, you're not my client. My client wants to sell it. And I ended up just telling, I can't take your call anymore. But yeah, it got really ugly, didn't it? Very uncomfortable.
Yeah, it did.
I'm sure for you, Mallett, you've probably been that, sitting there with a spouse or a child saying, that's my money.
Oh, yeah. Unfortunately, that's true.
Yeah, and you just got to be, I guess, calm and say, nope, here's the will. That's not what it says.
Right.
Well, aside from all of the nasty business of death and dying, I know that we have a lot of listeners who have children that are going off to college.
Yes.
And I have a son that is in the military. And right when that kiddo turned 18 and he joined the military, I got a power of attorney.
Excellent.
Just last week, he's been in the military 8 years. I used that power of attorney once again to get his register his car. So what are the suggestions that you have for parents whose kids are going off to college? Because most people think, okay, my kid's 18, but I'm still paying all the bills, so I'm still able to make the decisions. That's not the case.
That's correct.
So
once they turn 18, they make the decisions. You don't have to be contacted. In fact, if they go into the hospital, they're not going to tell you anything because they're 18 and, the HIPAA comes into place. And so we prepare powers of attorney, both financial and medical, and a HIPAA release so that they can talk to you if something happens. And that happens a lot. Unfortunately, kids go off like on spring break, like you were talking about before, and do some things that maybe aren't the smartest and end up in a hospital or end up somewhere that they want to be able to reach out to their kids. And very often they're not even going to call you. Unless, the child is awake and able to say, hey, call my mom or dad. Yeah.
Is that different if if you're guardian of a child and that child's over 18? Is it different? You still need to have the HIPAA disclosure and all that?
You mean if they're like special needs or something?
Yeah. If you have the guardianship, then you're okay. But the power of attorney is very important. Like if kids are going off to college. In fact, I believe it's so important that last year I gave discounts and I said, just come in if they're 18, they need to have this. You need to have this because you want to be able to speak to whoever it is about what they're doing. And nobody took me up on it. I was really surprised. Yeah. And I thought, I really just wanted to let people know it's a very important thing when they go off to college when they turn 18.
Because there's different kinds of powers of attorney. Is this was it called a blanket power of attorney?
Durable general?
Is that what it is?
Statutory durable power of attorney.
Which gives, like in Michelle's case, gives her power to sign just like she's Tate.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's the financial one. And then there's also a medical one. That has to do with, if you have to make decisions for them, say they're, in a coma or something happens and they need surgery, you can make that decision for them. Mm.
We have a mutual friend that her daughter, 21, 22 years of age, and she was in a horrific car accident and she was in this coma and couldn't even pay her rent. The apartment wouldn't let her in. And she was in the hospital for 3 months. She's like, well, I can't get in to pay. I can't get into her account. And she started realizing all of the things that she should have had in place to protect not only her daughter, but herself too.
Right.
That's the scary thing for me about what you do is a lot of times people don't realize they need some of these things until it's too late to get them.
It happens every day. I have somebody come in and say, I need a will, and they have never had it. Maybe they're in their 50s. And they come in, they say, I need one. What prompted is their parents passed away.
Yeah.
And that is usually what happens. Or something, egregious happens and in their lives and they realize that they need to fix that issue. So
it happened to me when my older brother was on life support. And I was trying to make decisions for him and they weren't allowing us to make these decisions, but it's like we were in another he was in another state, and you're like, well, who's going to make he can't make the decisions for him. It was very difficult.
Yeah,
it was but I think people have this misconception also that it just kind of gives them carte blanche to do whatever they want. So nosy mom can now look at whatever, and you can put limitations.
Yes, you can.
On what they can do, and
yes,
and dates and time.
Yep,
okay,
absolutely.
You mentioned in your bio that you also do premarital agreements. Is that like prenups?
Prenups
for us laymen's.
Yes, prenups. That's right.
Do you see a lot of those?
Not as often as I used to, but then I'm not doing as much of the family law anymore.
Okay.
So, but we do have a few, and we also do postnuptial agreements. So it's kind of a partition.
After you get married, you say, okay,
let's divide up our property just in the event that something down the road might happen. Yeah.
Interesting.
Oh, I haven't heard about the postnup.
I've never heard of that either.
No.
Yeah.
Is that something that, in the case probably of the prenup, have you had it where one of the spouses wants it and the other one?
Oh, yes.
And so that's got to be a delicate situation.
It is. It's very delicate. And we always say, the other side has to have another attorney, and they go to their attorney. And so sometimes between the two attorneys, we can say, okay, this is fair. We're not trying to make it
somebody
difficult.
over,
right.
yeah.
We're just trying to make sure that everybody knows up front what's going to happen in the event of a divorce.
Wow. I think that's probably more important nowadays. There was a story in the Wall Street Journal recently about women who aspire to be married to rich men. Mm-hmm. They're sort of just like arm candy. And their whole thing is, eventually, I'm going to get half.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Actually, there was a case, I want to say a couple of years ago, where some gentleman was in the hospital and ended up adopting his girlfriend so that she would inherit.
Oh, that's
No
great.
way.
That's
Yeah,
great.
that was-
Oh, yeah.
It is,
Things
isn't
would
it?
never be the same after that.
That's a little,
I would
that's a little
think.
Anna Nicole Smith.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah, that was an interesting case,
Yeah.
too. Yeah.
Wow. That's, I think that would probably be one of the best things, not one of the best things, one of the things that's really interesting about what you
Tell
do
us
is
how you
reading
really
some of
feel.
the cases and saying, because like we get stuff from the Austin Board of Realtors about things that realtors do, and you
Yes.
read them and you go, what the heck were
Yeah.
you thinking?
Oh, yeah. And looking at the listservs where all the attorneys have stories. And
Yeah.
it's been interesting.
Yeah.
I know you can't name names and you can't like do specifics, but is there any case, like just a real memorable case that keeps you in check, that keeps you doing what you're doing?
Oh, there's a few. Anytime there's been a spouse that's been abused or the children have been abused,
Yeah.
then I used to be on the board of the Hayes Caldwell Women's Center. Mm-hmm. And I did that mostly, I started that because of my background in sex crimes and child abuse cases. So when I joined that, I ran into a lot of that. And then we always, occasionally run into that. Sometimes it's not just physical abuse, it's emotional abuse. And so we have to help them through that. And it's very difficult. One of the things that I try to do, and Alyssa also tries to do, is we really want to empower those clients to say, okay, you've been under this thumb for so long. You need to move forward. You need to do this. And that helps them. And by the time that the process is over, very often they're just so grateful that, we helped them through the process because they never could have done it on their own.
This is in the case of divorce.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're in such the age of a digital age now where everybody is either being recorded or looked at, even in public.
Yes.
Are you seeing more and more of those cases to where, they call it bringing in their receipts and they're like, well, here's a video of X, Y, Z. And how much weight do those things hold in court?
They actually hold a lot of weight. I always tell people when they're getting a divorce, get off social media, get off of everything, because once you're there, all they need is that one little snippet, and that could be enough to do it. So, but one thing that was interesting is I just took a class recently in artificial intelligence and how that's affecting evidence.
Oh,
and
yeah.
There's a lot of people that are faking videos. And then in addition to that, some things that are valid are being considered fake because they don't know whether to say it's substantiated.
You got to
or
explain that to me. So what's the scenario here that you're talking about? Because I haven't seen this.
Well, I see a lot of videos either on TikTok or Instagram where they're gotcha videos. They're wearing something hidden or they're recording something and I know that we're a one party state.
This would be in
right?
the case of they're maybe one of the spouses is cheating and claiming they're not, and they get caught in a video.
Well, yeah, I see these videos, like these cheater videos, and they're catching them in a parking lot or dinner.
But in Texas, it doesn't matter, right? Or does it?
In terms of what?
If you're getting divorced in Texas, you just split everything up. It doesn't matter that one is,
right.
But in other
no
states,
fault.
It does matter.
Correct. Yes. Yeah, it's no fault, but sometimes people feel vindicated if they catch them in the act, and then can say to the judge. And sometimes the only thing it doesn't affect the divorce itself, but it might affect the division of the property. In terms of did that person spend money on the other person? And then that can be deducted. So that's a consideration. But I think what you were talking about was people like going up to their spouse's house, the new house or something, and then getting into a fight and maybe taunting them to get them to say things.
And it's so cringy. I don't understand why people, not only are you making yourself look bad, it's such an invasion of privacy, but you're putting it all out there for social media.
Have you seen social media, though? The number of people that post stuff and you go, what the heck? Sometimes I see stuff and I go, I hope your mom doesn't see that. That's terrible. People put all kinds of terrible things on social media.
They do. I think, it's sort of their 15 minutes of fame, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Or infamy, I guess.
Infamy, right.
It's actually kind of crazy. It doesn't really matter what they're famous for if they're just as long as they're famous. And a lot of those people on social media are famous for being idiots.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Mallett and Michelle were idiots.
That's true. Milena, have you ever had a divorce that wasn't quote unquote messy?
Yeah, actually, I've had several. And we try to settle most of our cases because we really know that when you go to court, it's emotionally draining, it's expensive. We try to avoid that for our clients. And so we often go through mediation. And mediation can often help settle those cases.
Where does it get messy? Does it get messy when they start wanting half of their 401k or their airline miles?
Yes.
Or is that when the devil's in the details, so to speak?
Very much so. Everybody, many people come in and say, oh, we've got it all worked out. And then when they start getting into the details, because we have to list all that, then that's where it gets a little hairy, and it's... well, I worked for that all my life, so why does she get half or why does he get half? So we go through that, and it can be difficult. I had one client actually came in. I was the mediator, so it was a husband and wife, and through the whole mediation, they were holding hands. And, and I thought, why are you guys getting divorced?
Elvis and Priscilla?
Yeah, and it was like they were so close to each other, but then it got to the nitty gritty, and they were fighting over UT tickets. And they had 4 tickets. And so I was trying to say, well, can you each take 2? No, because then we'll see them with their other spouses and, that kind of. And so that ended up, and I said, well, how about switching, like alternating? No, can't do that because that's going to be something that's going to be difficult because what if we miss the game? So, it can get a little hairy.
Don't you think there's some people that just got to fight about something, though?
Yes. Yeah. We do run into that as well.
On the real estate side, over the years, when I've been approached by people and they're saying, well, I need to know what the house is worth. We're getting divorced, but everything's, we got it all figured out. And I'm like, well, good luck with that. Because most of the time, like 2 or 3 weeks later, they go, she's hired an attorney, he's hired an attorney, everybody's mad, legal bills are going up. But I did hear a story once where the husband and wife had kind of agreed on how to split things up. They both hired attorneys, went to mediation, and they spent so much time and money on mediation. And I thought, I wonder, and maybe you don't want to speak to this, but if those attorneys actually helped in dragging that out.
I think in any profession, there's going to be people who do that kind of thing. We're pretty lucky in this area. Most of us know mediation is going to be required anyway. And so we try to set it up for our mediation. And when we go in there, if we get a settlement at the end of that day, that mediated settlement agreement is irrevocable. So when somebody walks out and has, second thoughts the next day, no, you've already agreed to it. Is that right?
I didn't know that. Mm-hmm. I probably knew that when I went through mine, but I didn't remember that.
Too bad, so sad. That's the too bad, so sad clause.
Yeah, it's very emotional. It's hard to get through that. I mean, I went through it myself in 2014. It's very difficult, but I would have much rather gone through mediation than gone to court. That would have been. And it was expensive.
You know what Todd says? Cheaper to keep
Cheaper to keep her. Got it on a T-shirt.
Yeah.
So if you have a young couple listening right now, and I'm thinking of 3 young couples that I have, that they're my children, and they are newly married, they don't have children yet, but they're all buying homes. Mm-hmm. What is your suggestion to them? How should they get their estate in order right now? Because it seems like such an adult I should do that when I'm 40. And I was trying to explain to my daughter, no, you're going to own a home. And if something happens to you, you want life insurance or something set up to where Jacob set up. And she's like, well, I'll be dead. What do I care?
But she might care because that house may end up in somebody else's hands at some point.
There you go. Good point.
Yeah. So that's something that, especially if they have any property, that's something that they really need to deal with.
So even at 20-something years old, when you're married, get wills. And
So, Mallena, explain that to me. So, young couple, the only property they have 2 cars and they have a house. Is there a scenario where the surviving spouse wouldn't just automatically inherit that stuff?
Typically, they would inherit. It would go to the surviving spouse. But sometimes you never know what's going to be out there, and that might be fighting that said, hey, that part of that money that went into that house was something I put in.
Okay.
You just never know what somebody can come up with.
I provided the down payment, and I put 10% in. So now that the house is going to be sold, I should get 10%.
And there's that case that I think it's out of Florida, as a matter of fact. The young couple that was married, and the night of her wedding, she was killed on a golf cart, and the mother of the bride is fighting the groom, saying, "Well, it was never filed, so her estate belongs to me," and it has gotten messy. Yeah, that's obviously
sad.
an extreme case, but.
I have a funny story about a case that I had, and it just, when you said that, it reminded me. It was a dog custody case, and we do those as well. And everything else had been settled, and we got to the point where they were fighting over the dog. And I said, well, okay, who's going to take this dog? My client was the husband. He wanted to keep the dog. He said she can't take care of him. The wife said, oh, no, I'm going to take the dog, and this was mine. And so they were fighting back and forth. Finally, my client relented and said, you can have it. In the meantime, the woman moves to Florida. And so he said, you can have the dog. But then right before we were supposed to transfer the dog died. It was run over by his cleaning lady.
Oh,
so
my gosh.
that was that. No. So then we started dividing. Everything else was done. We were getting ready to complete the divorce. And then I got a call from her attorney in Florida and said that the wife had died. So that was interesting. And so now it turned into a probate. And now her sister was fighting my client over the property because they were almost divorced, but he still got everything because that is, they were still married.
Right.
So then I'm waiting for the attorney to call me back. We're not settling the probate. And I got a call from another attorney, and he said, well, I hate to tell you this. He said, but the attorney died. Oh, God. So, yeah, it was God's honest truth. I walked out of there like,
Sounds
white.
like an episode of South Park. Everybody
really
died.
I know. I walked over to my paralegal, and I said, if something happens to me, run.
That's terrible.
That's as bad as you having to go into jail to get listing paperwork signed or getting an
I
offer.
had to do that once, yeah.
Get an offer signed.
Yeah.
So this is kind of an anomaly question, but what are grandparents' rights in the state of Texas?
Not too many, to be honest with you. It just depends on the situation. I have been able to get grandparents some rights to possession if their child perhaps had passed away or had disappeared. That's happened, and that's worked out very, very well for them.
But you don't have any right to see your grandchild just because it's your grandchild.
Not if the
Are there
parents
states
say no.
that side on grandparents?
Yeah, apparently so, but not Texas.
Not Texas.
No, that changed a few years back.
Yeah. Mallena, let's talk a little bit about your charity involvement in the community, because you're involved in a couple of charities, one of which is, I think you founded the Goat Couture.
Yes.
That was your idea.
Bloomsy Charities is the nonprofit, but yes, we put on Goat Couture.
I walked in it.
You did?
I was a goat herder.
You were a goat carrier.
I walked with Ron and Kathy's grandkids,
Yes.
so that was fun.
It is. It's a goat fashion show for those people out there that don't know what we did.
Was this the first year?
Yes, it was the first year.
Very well attended. We went,
Yeah.
and my wife and I loved it. But,
laughed and laughed.
yeah, the
It was
community really came out for that.
It did. We had like over 1,400 people.
Wow.
Amazing.
And for the first time. And this was just an idea that I had because we went to California, and in the middle of Union Square, they had a goat fashion show.
Wow.
And I thought, this would be so cool. We got to bring it back to Drip.
Yeah.
So we did. And
Any plans to bring it back next year?
yes, September 28th, 9/28. Save the date.
September 28th. Okay, Steve, are you gonna walk in the goat
well,
fashion
if
show?
I get invited, do I have to be
You are
invited?
invited.
Okay.
Yes, we
I
are
would
looking
love to.
for people.
I want to have the goat that Mayor Bill had, where it just put its 4 legs out in front of it, and he just dragged it around the stadium.
Can I tell you, goats are really heavy.
Yeah.
Even the little ones.
How do they smell?
I wasn't so much worried about what they smelled like. It was heavy, and there's all these people looking at me.
Yeah.
And this goat is like.
Yeah, it was fun. We were laughing our what's off.
Good.
How much money did you raise doing that?
We were able to raise for the FFAs, which is what we supported this year. There were 8 FFAs, so we gave each of them $1,000, so $8,000
Wow.
That's really
first
great.
year. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're hoping for more this next time around, and
Yeah.
we're asking for the FFAs to anybody who actually contributes the time, volunteers. We also give out volunteer certificates to the kids if they need it
They need that
to
for
help
school,
us.
yeah.
I just want to say officially, I got ripped off, and I should have won.
You should have
I
won.
should have won. I should have at least placed.
Goat carrier of the show.
I
You get
should've.
to do it again.
It's rigged.
Yeah, I was really impressed with how the community turned out for that.
Yeah,
It's really
I
a
was too.
good example of how tight our community is.
Yeah, yeah. And we had no idea how many people were going to show up. We
Yeah.
had maybe 200 tickets that we thought were going to, that was it. And then at midnight the night before, because we raised the price after midnight, at midnight the night before, we had 750 tickets sold. And we said, wow, this is bigger than we thought. And and it was all volunteer based. I mean, for the most part, we had people in my office were sewing costumes the 2 days beforehand. So, Elia, my paralegal, she borrowed my sewing machine and went to town making costumes.
That's
so
great.
That's great. Yeah.
What other charities are you involved in?
The Hill Country Senior Center. I'm on the
Okay.
board for that. And that's a great organization. They do a lot for the seniors.
Is that the one here in Dripping Springs? Okay,
yeah.
so everything that's at the thrift store, everything you donate at the thrift store gets
right.
turned around for profit to be used for them.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. And so that's a great organization. But we're bursting at the seams. We need to have a bigger place, a bigger thrift store, that kind of thing to be able to accommodate, because our senior population has gone up quite a bit. So we're definitely involved with that.
Are you associated with the apartments that are next to it, or the homes?
No, just the senior center.
Just the
itself.
senior center. Okay. And so what exactly does the senior center?
Hill Country Senior Center.
What do they do for our seniors?
They put on a lot of activities. Somebody wants to play Rummy Cube. If somebody wants to play bridge, they have lunches. If you go there right now, it's $5. I think they're thinking about going up to $6 for a lunch that's like homemade, and it's amazing.
I'm going to be 61 next week. Can I go?
Yes, you can go.
But you can't go, Michelle. You're not old enough.
We actually went one time with
did.
Dripping Springs Elite.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
fun.
We were raising money so they could get a new van.
Yep.
That's
Remember
right.
that?
Did they end up
Yeah.
getting the
Yes,
van? Oh,
they
that's
did.
great.
Yeah,
I can't
so-
remember how much we donated, but yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great.
And you said something about the women's.
Called
Hayes Caldwell Women's Center. Yeah.
But was that the one you were at this morning?
No,
Oh,
that was the women's club, the
so you're
Dripping
involved
Springs
in all
Women's Club.
kinds of
I
stuff,
am.
Milena.
I am.
That's the one that Dana and I went. We had purse bingo, and I won those purses. Hayes Caldwell Center. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That was
And,
a lot of fun.
I commend you for giving back so much to your community.
thank you.
I
We
think
enjoy
we
it.
need that spirit here.
Yeah, that's one of the things that we have always wanted to do. And now I'm also on the advisory board for the library expansion.
Oh, wow.
Oh, nice.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
We're going to have Sarah Rose?
Yes.
Yeah, she's coming on in a couple weeks. I can't
Oh,
keep track.
good.
Yeah,
She's
and then
great.
a couple more questions. You've been married 40 years,
Yes.
and I think, do you work with your husband?
Yes, he's in the office right next to me, and we're still married. Go figure.
I was going to say, what's your tips for that?
Yeah, I was thinking about that the other day because we just hit 40 years, and I said a lot of it I think is mutual respect
Yeah.
And also, you're going to have fights. Every family has fights. But you know what? If you don't hit below the belt, if you just no name calling, you don't attack them on, specific things that are going to be sensitive. I think that's a big thing.
Yeah. Michelle.
Steve.
Keep it above the belt.
Steve.
Mallena, you mentioned on your bio that one of the things you like besides photography and writing is ice skating.
Well, yeah. So I put that down sort of as a joke because when the ice skating rink just opened for Christmas.
Ask you that, if you went to that.
I did. And I skated. I hadn't been on skates in like 20 some years. And I had a blast and I never fell.
Oh, hallelujah.
But the week after I just fell walking. I was over at the courthouse and I'm like, no.
Yeah.
That's me. That's me.
Michelle could do that.
I'm always falling.
Yeah. Well, Mallena, this has been really fun. I've learned a lot about the family law and divorce and prenups and all that. So I appreciate you coming in.
How do they get in touch with you?
Well, they can contact the office, 512-858-9779. That's our main office number. Or they can email us at team, T-E-A-M, @ChristopherLawFirm.com.
That's great. Yeah, you got a good website. And it looks like you won a bunch of Best of Dripping Springs awards.
Yes, 7 years.
ChristopherLawFirm.com. So if you can remember that as well, go to there. Thank you so much for joining us. Like I said, your lovely friend, Kathy Hood, recommended you. And
so
I
sweet.
just adore Kathy. But thank you for spending your morning with us.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. You guys made it easy. Thank you.
Well, good. And we'll see you September 28th for goat dragging.
You betcha. And bring a costume. I mean, you want to dress up.
Oh, yeah. I'll definitely
I'm going to dress you up like a goat, Steve.
You are not going to dress me up. But thank you, Mallena. It's been fun.
Thank you. Take care.
Ready to turn your land dreams into reality? Look no further than Capital Farm Credit.
Need a loan for your perfect piece of land? Capital Farm Credit is there for you.
Their dedicated team will tailor a loan to fit your unique needs because your dreams are their priority.
Capital Farm Credit. Your land, your legacy. Visit CapitalFarmCredit.com or Mark Rutledge at 512-892-4425.
Capital Farm Credit. Together, we're better.
Capital Farm Credit, an equal credit housing lender. Elevate your living experience with M. Elliott Studio, your trusted partner in interior design, registered and licensed by the state of Texas.
You want your home to reflect your personal style and identity. Investing in a well-crafted design doesn't just beautify your home, it enriches your life.
Team principal and owner, Montana Elliott, understands the profound impact of a thoughtfully designed space. From remodeling to full design, M. Elliott Studio is the first step to unlocking your style.
Turn your aspirations into reality. Tailored to your taste and desires, M. Elliott Studio will work to create an environment that embraces your style with style.
Your space, their expertise.
MElliottStudio.com 512-781-0224.
This show has been brought to you in part by the real estate pros at the Mallett Integrity Team. When you're looking to buy or sell, you need them on your side. Why settle for less when you can have real estate done right? Give them a call at 512-829-2062 or get more info at MallettIntegrityTeam.com.
You know you like us, so go now to Apple Podcast or Spotify and leave us a review. Why don't ya? We love your feedback and comments. Email us at mallettandmichelle@gmail.com.
Thanks for putting up with us.